everyone. Welcome to the meeting for the month of March 2024. So the topic that was communicated for this spiritual meeting is meditation and self-abidance. So it's quite an interesting topic, you see. Uh, Basically, when we are in self-abidance, then are we in a state of meditation or not is an interesting question. When I was pondering or reflecting on this title today, you see, it's quite interesting that we human beings, being images, actually, when you universally look, at the term meditation, basically, we are always in meditation, right? So when I say that we are always in meditation, because you see, the tendency of the mind is basically that thoughts are always going outwards, right? And what happens is that we are so trained, from one life to another life, that really we are in meditation all the time, but probably we are not meditating on the right thing. You see, what I mean here is that we are actually in meditation focused on the object of our desire at a particular time. You know, when, say, you are going to work, you're basically meditating, or the object is actually work, you're meditating on that. When you're going for a walk, then the objective is walk, so you're meditating on the walk. So here, I mean, meditation is the attention falling on what we are actually undertaking. But this is basically related to our normal day-to-day life. Now, when we progress further, you see, when we start questioning, the purpose of actually our human birth, is it simply to keep on utilizing the mind, with the mind meditating, the thoughts which are meditating on the feelings, and as a result of the feelings, we meditate on the whatever is that objective activity. You see, this is the outward going mind, which is the reflective nature of the mind. But then the real meditation starts when the mind turns inwards, right? Which is the reflexive nature of the mind, where actually, you see, it ponders and it queries, you see, the purpose of human existence. So there actually then we come across these variety of ways, and meditation is actually mentioned as a means that we start isolating ourselves from this normal outward going meditating activity and start looking actually inwards, right? And that is basically when the mind actually turns inwards, it finds a very interesting aspect that look, normally we are actually used to everything that is actually of a changing nature, right? When you talk about time and you talk about space, and in that time and space, when you talk of images and events, they are all of a changeful nature, right? But now actually we find that everything which is actually changing has to be witnessed by something underlying, which itself is actually changeless, right? So what we find is that this changeless reality is actually consciousness. And that consciousness only is expressing itself as that silent changeless witness of this world of, changing reality, or the world of changing images. So this is basically in spirituality the true turning inwards, you see, utilizing what we call meditation to realize that there is something beyond simply the day-to-day, chain of events and the ever-changing events. So now, when we actually sit down in meditation, then we isolate ourselves from the external world of images and our connection with that, and try and focus on the presence of this ever present changeless reality. And then, as we understand, as the spiritual student continues his quest along this line, a time comes when he switches over, you know, to the outlook of consciousness and remains in that steady state of changeless peace, even though active in the world of images. So that actually is basically meditation and self abidance, right? And outstanding examples of these are, of course, Sage Ramana, Rishi Master Byansa Duno, his student Michael Ivanhoe, Ramakrishna, Vivekananda, Lord Buddha, Jesus, Shankaracharya, Yog Vashisht, to name a few actually. They were active as images, doing everything, whatever as is normally to be done. But even though being active in images, you see, they were abiding in the self, and that is actually what I'll say is through meditation coupled with what we call as self abidance or abiding in the reality. You see, there is a state where you can abide in the reality and you don't shift from that center, and not shifting from that center, we can still carry on with whatever we are carrying on with our day-to-day activities. So this is just a small introduction to this topic. Neeruji and Vijayji will take us deeper into it. So I'll request Neeruji to please, give take over. Neeruji?
Yes. Pranam, everyone. Pranam to Sage Sri Ramana Maharishi, Rishi Master Byansa Sadhguru, and all sages of the past, present, and future. Namaste to all beings present in the satsang. So, I'll start talking about self-abidance. Just a very brief idea of just to recognize what is this, what this state is about. And then I will talk about the teachings of the sage, about meditation, and also maybe integrating the main teaching, self-inquiry, and how meditation has its significance in this framework of attaining self-abidance through these practices. And then I will go on to talk about how Sage has recommended how the practice of meditation should be done, and the challenges that normally seekers might find or feel, and some remedies to the advancement. So let's start about self-abidance. So Sage has taught that the purpose of our life is to attain self-abidance. What self-abidance means really is connecting with our true self, which also means not getting caught up by the play of our individual identity or the body-mind based personality. Or you may say that self-abidance is like recognizing a deeper awareness within. It's a kind of universal vibe that's not just personal, but shared by everyone. So self-abidance is about embracing this universal awareness. It's the same awareness with which every individual becomes conscious of what is happening inside their mind and also occurring outside the body. So when you abide by the pure self, life tends to find a natural balance between the pure self and the personality, our individual identity, and you navigate challenges with a sense of calm. So peace comes. So it's like you discover your inner peace amid life's hardships and complexities. So Sage taught to disciples that they let go of the false identification with the body-mind focused personality and abide in the source awareness. So today, as Anilji has already introduced, our topic is meditation and self-abidance, which means, does meditation help us getting there? And if it does, how should we do it? If we study the main practice that Sage has recommended for attaining self-abidance, that is self-inquiry. In other words, it's called Atma Vichara also. So Atma Vichara basically means self-investigation. So it's asking yourself the question, who am I? So the idea of this practice is to dig deep and figure out where this I thought that we think we are or we believe we are, or our personal identity. So this comes from, where from this comes. So when we trace the source of I with intensity, we go beyond the usual stuff that we identify with, for example, our bodily sensations, our feelings that we experience, thoughts, etc. So, in this practice of self inquiry, we empty ourselves of all these ideas as we are diving deeper within ourselves to find out who we are. So, then we reach a stage or a moment comes where all we know is that we exist, which means all there is that feeling of I am, or the knowing of that I exist. So it's not about being this or that. So not existing like this, male, female, or the title or whatever designation. So not about being this or that kind of a person. It's just simple, just knowing that we are. So you exist. That's all. This is also called I, or an unbroken consciousness of the source. It's like being in a thought-free state where you are constantly in touch with your true nature, which is pure awareness. So no distracting thoughts, just you and your real self. That is the goal of this self-inquiry. But today we are figuring out if meditation has a role in this whole framework of self-guidance and the practice of self-inquiry. So how do we go about it? If we read teachings of the sage, he said real meditation is actually self-abidance. So real meditation is basically being totally focused on your true self. That's what sage has defined it, like sticking to your true self. They also call it Atma Nishtha. So what Atma Nishtha means? Atma Nishtha means being fixed as the self, nothing else, not as a person, not as a body or mind. So imagine meditation as this thought-free state where you are totally in the zone. So according to Sage, when you dispel the distracting thoughts through regular practice of meditation, you are left alone in this meditative state, which uncovers your true nature. So my talk will be basically based on from the book Talks with Ramana Maharishi, because Sage has given invaluable advice on how meditation fits into the whole spiritual journey, especially for those struggling with self-inquiry. Because some seekers found it challenging. So when a seeker asked him about meditation, Sage guided that those who find self-inquiry challenging must practice meditation. So in meditation, the devotee forgets himself or herself and meditates on I am pure self. So this is what they meditate on. So thus they continue to hold to this thought, or you may say this belief, because at that point of time, during their spiritual quest, they haven't realized self within them. So belief, that's what we can say, or you can call it a thought. So what sage has recommended, that they continue to hold to this thought or this belief. Ultimately, what they end on is the realization of pure self. So the belief comes true. But if you compare it to the self-inquiry, that's the flip side of it. So if you are into self-inquiry, there is no belief. You are like a detective investigating who am I. And when you reach the inner depths, transcending body, thoughts, going beyond feelings, going beyond any concepts or perceptions which you may have about anything, about any other person, or about even yourself. So transcending all this, and there you find the pure self. That is the self-realization. So these are the definitions that sage has given. So looking at it, meditation and self-inquiry, they are two different paths, but both leading to the same destination. Meditation works by belief, and self-inquiry works by investigation. But then, how meditation should be done? So, what sage has advised us. Sage said that the true sense of meditation manifests when the practice becomes firm and unwavering. This means a firm belief that you are self, and you stick to that thought. However, when when people commonly say about meditation, we think meditation is a process of focusing on some object. And so why they focus on the object is to keeping them away from any distractions. The object of meditation could be a mantra for chanting. It could be an image of a deity, or something in the body, even like the movement of breath. A lot of people meditate on that, or it could be some chakra in our etheric body, or maybe some other body part. Some seekers queried about it. So, what they should meditate on while meditating? Because sage recommends meditation. So, what they should meditate on? So, their problem was that the self is formless. So, they found it challenging to meditate on something that does not have a form. So, then sage suggested that they may meditate on any god or goddess like Shiva, Durga, Krishna, provided they stick to that one. And most importantly, Sage alerted that attaining the total focus on a single thought, for example, focusing on Shiva, Durga, so focusing on a single thought is also not the purpose of the meditation. Because what he said that the single thought on which they have been meditating must also disappear over time. Only then the realization of self will happen. So therefore, it is critical to recognize that the object of meditation, be it a deity or concept, should be seen as ultimately a reflection of that pure self. There should be a shift occurring from seeing objects as separate. I mean, different identities. So from separate to recognizing them as manifestations of self. So the meditation practice should be viewed as a method to tune the mind to gain focus on the self. And ultimately, the object of meditation should also vanish. That's what Sage has recommended. Further, Sage elaborated that since meditation is concentration on an object, so how it is useful, how it helps. It fulfills the purpose of keeping away diverse thoughts, distracting thoughts, and fixing the mind on a single thought. So it makes the mind stronger in the sense to gain that focus. So Sage told some vivid examples also to explain the importance of meditation. He said, normally for a beginner, it is challenging to turn the mind inward, to gain that focus, because mind is a bundle of thoughts. So when a man sits down, the seeker sits down to focus on the self, thoughts rush up by dozens. So in this situation, meditation is like giving like a piece of chain to an elephant to hold in its trunk. So the trunk of the elephant is usually very restless. It puts it out in all directions when taken out in the streets. So if the elephant is given a chain to carry, its restlessness is checked. The restlessness of the mind is just the same. Just like that elephant. So if the mind engages in meditation, the mind concentrates on a single thought, and the other thoughts are warded off. Sage also illustrated, very interesting examples to explain how the fight takes place within a seeker. So it's like the fight is between the seeker and the thoughts. So this fight actually continues for a prolonged period of time to gain focus on the object of meditation also, as this practice matures. So along the way, there is a lot of challenge also. So a lot of learning happens. So he said that imagine there is a cow, which is a bit of troublemaker. It keeps sneaking into the neighbors' fields to munch on their grass. Now, getting this cow to behave is a bit like taming a wild horse. You can't just tie it up because it will wait for the chance to break free. So, what do? You give it a taste of some really good grass in its own spot where, in its stall. So give it a really good grass, little bit of. So day by day you increase the quantity of the grass. So slowly what will happen to the cow? The cow forgets about the fancy neighbor grass and it chills happily in its own spot. So it's the same with our minds, always wondering. So the mind is the troublemaking cow, the thoughts are the neighbor's grass, and the stall is um, our represents our own true self. So with meditation, what happens is that as the meditation gets better, the mind is kept active in meditating on the object, which could be a god, a goddess, or even an image. The key is to stick with it. It's like training your mind to focus on that one thing. And as you keep practicing, the thought becomes your sidekick in the journey to inner peace, just like, works like that. So meditation is like like you can say, it's like a superhero that is fighting within you the chaos that exists in your mind. It battles distracting thoughts. It helps your mind focus on the one chosen thought. That is your object of meditation at that point of time. So the more you battle, the more peaceful your mind becomes. So, according to Sage, meditation is not about acing some, very complicated techniques. It is basically about strengthening your mind and finding the peace. When there's a realization of self occurs, then the peace comes as a product of that, as a, like, you can say, byproduct of that, and you can know, you can feel that yes, you are advancing. Sage also acknowledged the challenging challenges that are faced, that seeker faced during the meditation, with various thoughts arising forcefully. Um, Instead of viewing this as a hindrance, what Sage said that um, he encouraged devotees actually to recognize that even these thoughts are not just a waste of time. So he says that the thoughts, they are hidden inside, and so when the focus on the meditation improves, these thoughts are coming to the surface which were earlier hidden within. So as they come to the surface, and as the devotee maintains the focus, the thoughts eventually dissolve. So, although achieving one pointed attention in meditation can be a challenging task, but with practice and patience, um, it is possible to improve. So, he was encouraging seekers, explaining about it. The goal is to cultivate a focused and present state of mind. So, when the practice gets regular and consistent, a deeper experience comes, and then peace comes. So, Sage says that this experience of a peaceful feeling that happens during meditation, that is experienced, that is actually our true nature. So, that is within us. When the meditation is well established, then also he says that as the progress happens, so it is well established, it cannot be given up. It will go on automatically when the seeker is engaged in any work or play or any enjoyment activity as well. So even it will persist in sleep too. So the goal of meditation is to come to a state where the meditation becomes so deep rooted, so well established, that it will be just like a natural thing to the devotee, that it just continues, alongside everything that happens parallelly occurring within. So the meditator must see the object of meditation. This is the key point that we pick up from this teaching, that must see the object of meditation as the reflection of the pure self, not as the image, not as the just solely as the god or the goddess or any object like breath, etc. But actually, because meditation is, the belief is pivotal to meditation. So the belief that actually this object of meditation is the reflection of the pure self. So true meditation, that is being fixed as the self. At the same time, very important that the seeker believes their goal is to remain as that self, who is reflected in that deity or the object they meditate on. So for themselves also, to remain as that self. This is also, the other part of the belief. First part of the belief is that the object of meditation, to see that as a reflection of self, and the other part, of very important part of the belief of the practice, is that their own belief about themselves, that they are also a reflection of that same self. For example, some people focus on their breath, so they allow their attention to rest on the sensation of the breath, moving in and then out of their body. So when the mind inevitably wanders, they guide their focus back to the breath, because this is what they have figured out for the, as an object of meditation. So they do it without judgment. Now it is important to remember that the seeker must see the breath as the manifestation of the pure awareness. If your aim is to attain self-abidance, that's what the point is. So the realization of self occurs if even the thought of breath also, ultimately the thought of the breath or any object of the meditation also vanishes. And ultimately just the pure self remains, nothing else. Not the devotee, not the thought of breath or any other thought, just the pure self. To come to this point, and then it is the, way of attaining abidance. So I mean by that is that individual will still be there. Bodily activity of breath will also be taking place as normal, but there will be no thought of it. No thought that I'm meditating on it. So that is the level underneath, all action and perception that should be taking place or would be taking place in that process. Another factor critical to the success of meditating is the duration. So for how long, etc. So how long we should meditate per day, how many times we should meditate in one day, should we have closed eyes or open eyes while meditating? Well, the answers were also provided to all these queries. So meditation should be done as frequently as possible and as long as you can integrate it into your daily routine. Um, at the same time, it is also understandable that when we commit time to meditation, like 1 hour of our time from our 24 hours of all the time that we have during one day, night, or maybe 2 hours, according to how long we could afford to do the meditation with, let's say, 100% concentration, the quality of the outcome definitely will be superior. You will feel a depth of self inside you and much more peaceful compared to meditating while performing any work like your job activities, like your household duties. Um, but it is also understandable that normally we cannot reserve more than a fixed amount of time if we want to do a concentrated meditation like this. So therefore, it is important to meditate on the self while performing other jobs also. When we can't sit, but there is other jobs going on, for example, driving or you know using some other mode of transportation, or doing your work at home, etc., in the office, or talking to someone. So what we mean by this is to pay attention to the self while doing all this other stuff. Most important, where your mind is. This is something to ask ourselves, no? Or to see, or to find out. So most important thing is where our mind is when we are involved in some activity. So the mind can be turned inward even when we are talking to someone, even when we are doing some other activity. The principle is that we must bring awareness. So awareness to the front of every action, to the front of every thought, to the front of everything that we encounter. For example, if there is a sound, if we hear, So think about the same awareness, which is the source of that sound. If there is a person we meet with, it is the same awareness appearing as the person, and the same awareness is appearing as the conversation that takes place between you and that person. It is the same awareness that is appearing as the feelings you may have towards that person, for example, like appreciating them, or feeling affection, or regard, etc., or maybe even negative feelings, if that arises because of some reason. But bringing awareness to the front of every experience that we have. So for meditation, what is necessary is an unbroken attention to self. So self reveals when the attention is constant. So in a sense, self-abidance can be attained through meditation, provided the devotee thinks that in reality the object of meditation and the devotee themselves, they are none other than the pure self or awareness. This belief must be very firm, and the meditation should go on constantly while engaging with the world, or when they are silently focusing attention on the object of meditation. What matters is the intensity of the thought of meditation and the consistency of the attention to the source underlying all manifestations. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Neeru. Quite a in-depth, look into meditation and self-avoidance. You've covered, I think, most of the key points leading from meditation to abiding actually in the reality. Thank you very much for the beautiful and deep talk. Vijay, can you please give your view as well?
Hari Om, everyone. Start off with 3 ohms. Om. 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 Dear seekers in the divine, dear seekers in the self, this topic of meditation and self-abidance is a topic that every seeker is keenly interested in, because the goal of life, as everyone knows, is to abide in the self, and that is one of the primary reasons we are all sitting here in communion with each other, sharing what is meditation and what is self-abidance. We'll start off with the word meditation itself. A seeker, when and an aspirant, when the mind is fluctuating, wants to try and address that fluctuating mind. Taking a step back, primarily the mind has got 3 aspects to it, which is it's quite an outgoing. It's by very nature it's outgoing. The mind is also flitting from object to object like a butterfly, and it's also, the mind is very unsteady. So these are the 3 primary aspects of the mind. That's its very nature. You can't stop it from being that. And within that process, you have thoughts flitting in and flitting out all the time. And that's the experience of every person. It is nothing new that is being said. Thoughts come and thoughts go. Now the fundamental discussion and sharing here is, how do we go about trying to bring about, let us start off by using the terminology concentration rather than meditation, because meditation in today's parlance is used quite um, uh, by everyone generally to say I'm meditating, but essentially what one is doing is concentrating. Uh, Everyone who sits down and tries to focus the disarray of the mind is trying to bring it together to focus on either one object or one thought or one person or one entity, whatever the reason may be, or even a japa, concentrating on a japa. It doesn't matter what one is doing, but one is trying to use that technique to try and uh, bring the dissipated mind into a concentrated mode, into one single thought or one single, because there are multiple thoughts happening at simultaneously all the time, one thought coming in, one thought going out, and the mind is all the time in a state of flux. So when that process of concentration is being done, the mind is still wavering. Initially, when the aspirant is on the path, and many a aspirant have said that when I have started, and they use the term meditation, when I start meditating, I find that all kinds of bad thoughts come in my mind. And initially, it was very nice. First few weeks, it was beautiful, very nice. I really enjoyed it. And then I find that all kinds of thoughts are coming in. Why is it so? In fact, if anything, it should be going down, isn't it? So the answer to that primarily is that when one is concentrating and when one starts bringing the thoughts down and focusing on something, it helps in the process initially and it starts focusing. But as one goes deeper and deeper from the conscious level to the subconscious level, a lot of mala, as in unwanted subconscious thoughts, arise from the depths. As they call it, the manthan, it's called in Sanskrit parlance, where the churning of the sea is done. When you churn, um, uh, you know, anything, you all this the scum starts coming out, and that's what happens. And that is also nothing wrong with it, because one has to not get attached to that and start agitating over that. Let that come and let that go, because that has to come out. That scum has to come out and release itself back into consciousness. If one holds onto it, one gets caught in that cycle of, they call it the chakravyuha cycle, in the web, the matrix, and you get stuck in it. A very important confluence of energies happened just a day and a half ago on the 8th of March, which was the Mahashivratri day. And on that day, the confluence of all these planets, and this is within the changing, within the aspect of what we see and hear, within space-time continuum. All these, because an aspirant is only working within this confines of space-time, body, mind, intellect concept. Mahashivratri is the day where all these energies come together, and it's the most auspicious time. And we just say Om Namah Shivaya because that was the time, and Shiva, the word Shiva is the light of pure consciousness. And that reflected light of pure consciousness as reflected in this world of the changing from the changeless, is objectified in the form which is the linga, which is without beginning and without end. It is that absolute pure consciousness, it's only a reflection. Because linga, the meaning of the word linga means that which it points to. Say, for example, in Hindi, it is pulling and thrilling. It is only pointing towards the Purusha and the Stri. So, linga is actually, the ling is an objectification of that absolute light of pure consciousness. When one uses, say, for example, that as an object to concentrate upon, and as it was just said, that using only these tools as just not as an object itself in itself, as a material object, but a reflection of that absolute consciousness, then one rises up within. That concentration becomes so deep that the mind gets focused. And when the mind gets focused, that very concentration becomes so deep that it drops into meditation. The word meditation can be used, but essentially meditation can never be done per se, because it is like saying something like, I've said this before, it's I'm doing sleep. You cannot do sleep. You can try to do sleep. When sleep happens, you drop into it. You cannot do sleep. You can try to sleep by putting your head on the bed, relaxing, doing all kinds of techniques, whatever has to be done to fall asleep. Those with problems of insomnia also do try all kinds of things, but they only try to sleep. Sleep only happens. And the same thing with meditation. Meditation happens. One does concentration, which then leads into meditation. Because it is the I, the limited I, that is actually trying to, the notional I, the individual within the changing, that is trying to concentrate and be one with that ultimate reality and find one's own true nature, which essentially one already is. One is only trying to remove that notional I. When it drops away, concentration culminates in meditation. And when that meditation happens, that can happen for a short period of time. And that short period of time is, one is in complete sort of realization of that one's true nature. It can be called realization because one is completely and totally in that meditative state. It can be called samadhi in certain terms. But then one comes back and wakes back into the world of objectification. And the body, mind, intellect gets engrossed and goes back into that day-to-day activities. How does one get that particular state to be permanent? One of the most important things is to not try and constantly wanting to reach and attain that same state. One should never try and do that, because when one gets that glimpse of self realization, one wants to get it again and again. But when that wanting becomes again and again, that desire is there to attain it, it becomes harder, because one is then putting a hurdle, because the desire is still there. The idea is to get rid of the desire, but unbeknown to the aspirant, one is wanting that state, not the ultimate, but that particular state which was temporary. If one has to desire, one has to desire for the desireless state, ultimate state, self absorption, or even self abidance. But when one is seeking, wanting that temporary state of realization, temporary, which one has experienced and then come out of, it becomes very difficult, because then a hurdle is put up in that desire. So rather than that, the seeking has to be intense, not wanting something for the sake of wanting, but the intense desire for that absolute, total, complete state. And then when that continues, the objectification process slowly and slowly drops away, because the changing and that attachment to the changing is very strong. Though it's only notional, it is absolutely notional. If one is ripe, when the aspirant is absolutely ripe, it will drop away in a here and now. That's why they call it realization is here and now, because basically it is, you already are that. But when it is clouded by all these notional attachments, or to the I, as it were, it forms a notional barrier. And that then, when that constant aspiration, sitting down and really focusing on that object, happens completely, the object disappears, and that very same aspirant, that I, when the mind gets thinned out completely, one doesn't even need to do it, but automatically the mind turns inwards. And Sadhu Om had made this statement, where he had said that the mind is outgoing. The moment the mind goes outwards, automatically it forms the world and me. That is duality, me and the other. Rather, when that same objectification is turned inwards, the I itself, using the same I, because that's the only instrument one has, the mind, when that is turned inwards, it goes inwards to search for the root from where that I arose. Not by a mantra process, not by a japa process, not by saying, who am I, who am I, who am I, but trying to see where from and to whom is this arising to. A very sincere, ardent, intense search. And when the mind is thinned out, it automatically goes in One can even try that. It is not as if something it has to be done at a particular time. One can that practices can go on anytime simultaneously with the so-called concentration, meditation, as well as the self-inquiry. And when that inwardness happens and the search for that I, which is the source of all this changing, this changing is the reflection of that changeless. And the source of this changing is the I. Because the I, based on the root of the I, comes I am, and then upon that comes I am this, I am that, I am XYZ, all the hundreds and thousands of personalities uh, form the flowers and the plants on top of the I am. When it is turned inward to find out the root source from where that I arose, goes changing, leads straight into the changeless, because it is the changeless. It is none other than the changeless. And that, when that realization becomes firm and changeless, that is what in language or parlance is called self-abidance. Because one is abiding, that one, even there's the one also is not existing, but it's just called self-abidance. Because that I is not there. There's only that changeless, that totality of consciousness. That is abidance. And in that state of self-abidance, uh, functioning happens. Functioning is happening all the time. All the great sages and saints, as soon as they achieved self-realization, self-abidance, the body did not disappear. The body continued for many years, because the state of abidance, as it were, to the outside world, was only for the seer of that body mind. Whereas that body mind, there was no self-abidance. For that body mind, there is no self-abidance. For Raman Maharshi, he is that totality. There is no other. So where is the self-abidance? I am in self-abidance, you're not. There is no question of that. For Raman Maharshi, it's only for the seer, the other person would see him as he's in self-abidance. But for Raman Maharshi, he was the changeless, that absolute totality of consciousness. There is no other. He is the changeless and the changing, because the changing and changeless are only one. And that, when that becomes completely absorbed, then there comes a time when absorption is so complete and total that even the body has no need to continue further on this earthly plane. Even Ramakrishna Paramahamsa said that, one of the greatest sages of the 20th century, he said, there is a very, very slight amount of the body is continuing only to feed itself a little bit, so that the body can continue on as per its requirement. It has to complete its prarabdha, and then it will follow away automatically. So is the case with all sages and saints. They continued on, and whenever the time came, the body just dropped away. So meditation and self-abidance. Meditation, concentration culminates in meditation. And meditation itself, when it gets steady, then it is self-abidance. And then the continuation of life, that body mind continues. And then the changeless functioning as the changing is only a happening in consciousness. Doing happens. Work happens. But there is no doer thereof. That is the truth. And that is the ultimate, absolute truth. One has to be focused very deeply if one really desires, because desires are very difficult to get rid of. Why not desire for the highest? Desire for desirelessness, rather than intermediary stages. Desire for the highest, absolute. Let us all, in right now, here and now, use every moment, not just while meditating or otherwise. Try and use that to strive on this path, because it's only effort that can lead to that state of effortlessness. It can only be effort that can lead to that state of effortlessness, though it is not even required, but one has to do it. That is the law of the changing, as it were. So, with this, we will just do a very short concentration, I would term it. And let us just sit down. Oh. As the seeker, as an aspirant, the ultimate desire is for desirelessness. Let the one and only goal of life, as the changing, in the changing, be the goal of self-abidance. Let there not be a break in this desire for desirelessness. Using this very instrument of the mind, let us slowly turn inwards, seeking the source of this mind, of this I thought, from whence it arose, wherefrom has this I arisen from, where, who is this I, what is this I? Dive deep, dive deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper into the very source from where this I arose. As one goes deeper and deeper and deeper, the very quest, the very I dissolves. There is no I, there is only that pure, absolute, total, unadulterated, pure consciousness, pure awareness, ever existing, ever real. Om. पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः Om.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, Vijay.
Thank you.
Okay, look, thanks to Vijay and Neeru ji for a very beautiful presentation. I think the topic has been very well covered, and I thank all of you for having attended this meeting, having given your time. Thank you very much, and we'll catch up again in a few weeks' time.